I appreciate it. So, again, my name is Mr. Ponce. I am the MTSS coordinator for Omar Blair. I'm excited to talk to you guys about what we do. So, first off, what is MTSS? It's a framework that we apply not only at the state level, but with our school that's designed to support the needs of all students. And just around the most important components of MTSS, that includes team driven shared leadership, data based problem solving and decision making, family, school, and community partnering, layered continuum of supports, excuse me, and evidence-based practices. Okay, next slide. In terms of how, or what I'm going to focus on in this presentation is data cycle one. We finished data cycle one last month, if I remember correctly, and we basically use data cycles as a way of collecting data in their intervention classes on how kids are doing. And so, starting with the beginning of the year, we take screening assessments to determine where kids should be placed in terms of their interventions. Tier one, that's kids that are closest to on track or actually might even be ahead. Tier two might be a little further behind. And then tier three are kids that are significantly behind. And we track their data for 6 to 9 weeks using progress monitoring that is happening. We are a school that does intervention every day. There are certain schools that they might only see it weekly, but we are a school that's committed to making sure that our kids are getting daily intervention. And basically, at the end of that 6 to 9 weeks, we do a data day. And a data day is where we get the teachers to come together and we talk about, all right, what is your data showing? What trends are we seeing? What kids are doing really, really well? What kids are maybe struggling? And then the kids that are doing really, really well, they could do either moving up a skill, meaning that they're still in the same tier intervention group, but they're going to move on to the next thing. If they are just blowing it out of the water, then we might even consider moving them up a tier if that's available. Maybe giving them a higher, more complex intervention to really meet the needs of rigor. And then the other set of kids, the kids that might not be growing as much as we want them to, we ask teachers to collaborate with their grade level team to look at the data and nominate kids that they're seeing that aren't making their growth goals when it comes to intervention. With those nominations, a leadership team for each school, along with me, the coordinator, comes together to review the data that we are given and decide whether or not we are going to move forward with what we call as a child study. A child study is a more in-depth look at the student and making sure, okay, there's something going on. Let's do a root cause analysis around what is the problem or what's the challenge that's leading this kid to not be able to succeed. So we've already done one full data cycle. We're going to finish data cycle 2 January 12th. And so we're getting ready to do this again. So next slide, please. So in terms of our goals, we had 2 goals when it comes to MTSS, specifically within intervention. Goal number 1 is that 70% of our kids are moving up a skill within the same tier. So just like I said before, that means that they're making growth, they're making progress, and although they might not be moving up a tier in intervention, they are moving up in terms of the progress that they're making. The second goal is that there are 10% of students that are moving up a tier, that are showing tremendous growth and are able to move up. So breaking down the data, I was able to do that last week with all the data that we've received so far. And in elementary, we have 81% of students in the elementary school that are moving up a skill. So that means that they are progressing, they're showing that they're getting the things that we're teaching them, and that we can move forward with the lessons that we're doing. And we see that 12% of them are actually moving up a tier. So they might have started in tier 3 and now they're moving to tier 2. Or they might have started in tier 2 and now they're moving to tier 1. And then for the junior high, we see very similar numbers. We see that 78% of scholars in intervention are moving up their skills and 10% are moving up a tier. So that means that whole school, if we look at the average, that means 80% of scholars are moving up their skills and 11% of them are moving up a tier. So we are currently meeting both of these goals in and that's really great. We're going to just continue to work on that and develop that. And I just want to applaud, just like Miss McNeil said before, that this is really the work of the teachers, right? The teachers are the ones that are coming together to really make sure that these interventions are being done to fidelity. And because of that, we are seeing some tremendous growth. And so I really want to applaud the hard work that our teachers are doing. Next slide, please. So like I said before, child study is one of the key components of what we work on because it is such an in-depth process for what we're trying to examine in terms of a kid. It starts with the data day where we examine, all right, what kids are not making their growth goals. And then we go into the recommendations where our mental health team is a part of it, our academic team is a part of it, and we look at the notes and what we do have. And then finally, after the nomination process, I go back and I tell the teachers, hey, this kid, we're definitely going to do a child study next week. Here's the time. Please bring all of your data. And then for kids that don't meet the child study criterion, it might be for a variety of reasons. One example I can come off the top of my head is that we had just moved a kid to a different tier. So they were getting a different intervention. Because it was so recent, we didn't have enough data yet to really make any root cause analysis that would have been viable. We needed more data to be collected before we could make a decision. And so we were going to say, all right, we're going to keep that student on watch. We have another data cycle coming up. Please consider nominating this child when data cycle 2 ends. So that's just something that I can say as a reason that we might not nominate a kid. Next slide, please. At the end of data cycle, at the end of data cycle 1, I gave a survey to the teachers just around how they felt MtSS was going. The strengths were that 73% of the respondents felt that they were supported in the MtSS process. 65% of respondents felt that they understood the process from beginning to end. And 92% of respondents said that when they put in a recommendation, that they're receiving a response for within 48 hours. And what I mean by a recommendation is if there is a student, either behaviorally or academically, that is of a concern for a teacher, that they have the opportunity to fill out a Google form and send it to me saying, hey, Johnny is struggling in X, Y, and Z. I would love it if you could look at his data and see what next steps and take a closer look at him. This allows us to be a little bit more nimble than just waiting for the end of a data cycle to do some of that work around discussion. So it gives us the chance to look at these kids on a rotating basis and make sure, all right, is this student getting all the supports they need? Are we following protocol? What's the next step to making sure that they're getting everything that they need? So next slide, please. Opportunities for growth, because it shouldn't just be all sunshine and rainbows, but the opportunities for growth are, there were 50% of respondents that said data meetings, rated data meetings positively. So when I look through the comments, some of them felt as if there wasn't enough actionable results in some of the meetings that we were having. And that same comments were being made for the child study. The last one is 39% of respondents felt they had adequate time for MtSS tasks. And that could be something like making sure that the data is collected, making sure that they have all of the tracker ready to be updated, filling out the form for the child study or for the data day. So what am I doing based on that feedback? If we can go to the last slide, I think it's the last slide, besides questions, of course. What am I doing based on that data? Or what are we doing, excuse me? The first one is to just make sure that teachers are aware of how data days and child studies are going, and that they might not see everything that's happening behind the curtain, but there's a lot of things that are happening when they're doing X, Y, and Z. We are working with our consultant and the behavior support team to show how we're doing these supports for students. So if a student is a tier 2 behavioral student, what does that look like for them? What is the plan? How are they getting supported? Who's the person that's checking in with that student? and what are they doing with that student. So we're going to be a little bit more clear, so that way some of that feedback that we're getting around not having clear actionable results is being spoken to, because I think that there just is a ton of different things in this, and it's just really important for me, because I know that sometimes I don't slow down. I want to make sure that I'm slowing down to be as clear as possible around the things that are going on with these students. The next step as well is that we're nearing the end of data cycle 2. We're going to make sure that we get more feedback from them. So we're going to include the survey as a part of the next steps before they leave their data day, to make sure that we're getting, or the child study, to make sure that they're getting the chance to give us the feedback. We're also just going to make sure that I'm working with the admin and leadership team around making sure that this pre-work is given enough runway to be done. We know it's really hard to be a teacher. It's not that long ago that I was teaching at Omar Blair, and we want to make sure that we're making it as sustainable as possible. So just figuring out ways that we can make it where they can get this work done at a certain allotted time, that we can make sure that they have that, is really important to me. And then finally, because we are at the halfway mark, I've gone through the MtSS recommendation tracker, and I've just made sure that I have collected all the data of where we're at with certain scholars that have been recommended. And I'm going to be sending out emails to teachers, just letting them know, hey, thanks to you, thanks to your data tracking, thanks to your hard work, these are the steps that we've been doing with this scholar. And that goes again to this idea that there are a lot of moving parts in any school. And sometimes it's really important to slow down and recognize the hard work that our teachers are doing, so that way they're feeling like that work isn't going to waste. So that's really what these communications are going to be doing as well. So with that, the last thing is just any questions. So I know I went pretty fast, so I'm sorry. Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Dr. Garcia. I actually have an example that I can share. So we do walkthroughs throughout the data cycles to try to feel how things are going within interventions, to make sure that programs are being done to fidelity. And we also, I work with a team member for the elementary, and then I'm building up the capacity of a team member on the JH side to look at what data we're collecting and making sure that it is being done to fidelity as well. And so there was an instance in one of the class grade levels where there was a question around, oh, there seems to be an inconsistency about when we're getting this data and how we're getting this data. And so they brought it to my attention. I said, all right, why don't we do a walkthrough just to see that everything's going the way that we expect it to go? And then when we saw that those things were a little bit off just here and there, we made sure to say, okay, is this something that needs to be spoken to the grade level or just individuals? When we saw that because this grade level had some newer teachers that may have been confused around some of the norming, we then did a retraining with those team members to make sure that we re-normed around it. So to answer your question, at the beginning of the year, we train everyone on the curriculums that we use, including the progress monitoring, but we're also trying to make sure, because as time goes on, people might get tired or they might mistake in something and they kind of move forward. We are also just trying to do these temperature checks throughout the year to make sure that the data is still remaining viable. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ponce.
Yeah.